Hi, everyone. This is James, and this week we're going to be talking about close confusers as our principles of learning. So, what are close confusers? Usually, they're words, symbols, or concepts that look similar, sound similar, or fulfill similar functions, but are meant to be distinct. The skillful teacher uses the example of a lowercase b and a lowercase d. If you compare them, you'll see that they really are very similar and could very easily be confused if you're not familiar with the alphabet. Homonyms are also a common example. For example, we have right and right, left and left, red and red, and even conquered and conquered. Close confusers will also crop up often in science courses, such as the difference between weight, mass, volume, and density. Also, the difference between the Krebs cycle and the Calvin cycle. Mathematics is also prone to this, since the language of math is not intuitive, which makes it difficult to understand. For example, students trying to understand the relationship between fractions and decimals might be a close confuser. More advanced studies, like, for example, sociology, will also run into this, the difference between capitalism and mercantilism being one example. So, under the principles of learning that are outlined in Saphier, close confusers fall under the technical category, alongside other examples like mnemonics, practice, and degree of guidance. But it's a little unusual as a principle of learning in the fact that it's problematic. Close confusers can be a tool for more advanced instruction, but at more basic levels, they can lead learners astray. This becomes really obvious if a teacher is a specialist in a field, because she's liable to introduce close confusers, without first taking the steps necessary to make sure the students are prepared. So, how do we deal with close confusers in our instruction? The most widely accepted and successful method is to focus on teaching the more general concepts first, since close confusers tend to become relevant when you begin to study something in depth. For example, imperialism and colonialism may be functionally identical, but it's easier to distinguish between them if you study imperialism as part of a form of government, for example, empire, and then later come back to examine colonialism as an extension of that foundation, such as colonies being created for an empire. Other recommendations include presenting students with concrete examples of close confusers whenever possible, such as during guided instruction, walking them through close confusers that might trip them up later. Prior experience with close confusers also augments students' understanding. They can also be effective gotcha questions in homework because they remind the students, that they have to pay attention and follow the steps to do their work. And then you can check on their comprehension using a similar close confuser in a quiz. So, how do you tell if a close confuser is a good challenge for a student or if it will just kind of distract and frustrate and maybe even humiliate them? Basically, it's all about when the students are ready to move from basic concepts to complex situations. And we can see that in Bloom's taxonomy. It really depends on whether your instruction is focused on remembering at this stage or if you've moved up to understanding. For example, if your students are still struggling to remember the basics and haven't gone beyond listing or memorizing exercises, it's too early to introduce close confusers. Keep things broad, and if you have some bright students who are beginning to draw the right connections, tell them to hold their thoughts for now. For example, if you're teaching students about Earth's rotation, some of the students might start to pick up that, the Earth doesn't just rotate in place, but they might say rotates around the sun. And you can correct them that that's actually called revolution, but you don't want to go into depth until the rest of the class is ready to catch up. On the other hand, once your students have started to define the concept in their own terms and can identify it more easily, then you want to move up to complexity of close confusers. When studying weather, for example, once your students understand that weather is short-term, you can then introduce climate as a long-term counterpart to weather. It's a kind of natural extension that really helps the students not fall prey to close confusers later on, but it also helps to reinforce what they already learned regarding the basics. Remember that, as the saying goes, the exception proves the rule. And also remember that language barriers are a huge issue for this, especially when you consider ESL students. A lot of English words are just one letter apart but mean vastly different things, like of and off, or lose and loose. So hopefully you have an idea now about how to use close confusers in the classroom in a way that benefits your teaching rather than causes confusion and mayhem. So thanks for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.